Drew. So, can you tell us a bit about your background? Maybe go into your journey in professional football, and I guess how you ended up then working as a performance coach.
Um, well, yeah, I think it was quite straightforward in terms of like many kids. I've got a son now who's 5, and he seems to want to kick the ball around a lot. I think it starts there. You start playing on Sundays, and then you fall in love with the game. But yeah, I fell in love with it, I think, about eight years of age. So 1986, I was 8. So I remember the Mexico World Cup inside out, and then I remember the next championships then in 1988, the Euros, when I was then 10, and that was it. Then I was in love with it, and it was very clear for me then, looking back, I'm going to be a professional. That's all I want to do. I don't really care about anything else. I'm going to get there, and yeah, and that was the journey. Joined Norwich City at the age of 10. I got picked up playing locally. Had a couple of offers from clubs in London, but Norwich had a really good pathway to the first team. It was quite clear they got players in the team really quick if you were coming up through the youth. So joined them. Had a fantastic ride up to the age of 14. Travelled all over Europe and the world, playing tournaments and school holidays. Great exposure from Brazil to Russia to Hungary and Europe, and playing in all these tournaments. And then got the opportunity at 16 to leave school and joined Norwich. And actually, on my 16th, when I was 16, I was doing my GCSEs. I played in a game at the training ground at Norwich and scored 4 goals. And the staff had seen me play, the first team staff. And then I had a meeting with the youth coach, because I was still at school, and they wanted me on the bench in the Premier League against Everton. I mean, at that point, like I said, I was still doing my GCSEs, but you reflect on it post career and went, wow, I must have been a really good player, because you can lose sight of that, and you can lose sight of what it was. And then a year after leaving school, I was in the first team, made my debut at Wolves, part of the England under-20 squad, had Adidas contracts, and so everything was on. I was at the top of the game at that point, one of the best, probably 30, 40 players in the country. The next 15, 16, 17 seasons after, 15 seasons after that, was spent looking for that form, ironically. Never maintained the talent I had as a young player. And then you're off down all the rabbit warrens, which are, there's plenty of them if you want to go down there. So the rest of my career was spent doing that.
And to move into performance coaching then, and building this business that you have, and working with all the athletes that you have done over the past number of years, how did the interest how did your interest start in this side of things, and then how did you actually decide to make a career from it?
Well, I'm a very sensitive guy. I'm a very deep thinker. I always have been that way. I see it as an absolute gift today, but it brings its burdens, of course, because it means you feel everything. I feel joy heightened. I feel sadness heightened, depression heightened, love heightened. I feel everything all in. And I was always that way. And I'm an absolute winner. I know that about myself. I was an alpha male leader in most of the teams I was in. I was the guy who would always have to put my foot on the line in these shuttle runs. I wouldn't be able to do 9 press-ups if we were doing 10, because I'd destroy myself for weeks with guilt. And you look back and you break that down, and what an incredible gift. So very, very, very wired, very driven. And I was always obsessed about being the best I could. And so that led me into doing all kinds of things. I fell into the mental stuff because I studied with Gary Gray at Gift in America, and I studied with John Hardy, Fast for Education, on human movement and biomechanics. So my business for 4 years was conditioning with athletes. I was the private coach I had my first business past fitness was looking after Premier League players. Really, we had about 25 players on our books between Jake and I, my business partner, assessing and solving movement dysfunction, patellar tendinopathy, labrum issues in the hip, back issues, recurring injuries that we study completely differently. Gary Gray, Module 1, Day 1, disagrees with Module 1, Day 1 of physiotherapy on how the body moves. So that interested me because all the physios never got it right with me. And I had a lot of mates who were playing at top clubs, and it was the same deal. More injections, more painkillers, more lifting barbells in the gym with no relevance to what they do on the pitch. And so I was obsessed with performance, and so I went down that road for years. And then what happened is that I was looking after 10, 12 players a week at their houses at the gym. So a lot of the guys have their own setups at their houses, and I'd turn up there whatever time the guys needed me, doing myofascial scraping work, all kinds of stuff I was doing long before it was here. I studied with the Steckos and Graston in America. Yeah, and then what would happen is I'd typically set my treatment table up. Okay, what's going on and how? And we'd be an hour and a half. We hadn't even started.
Mm.
And the guys started to say to me, I get so much talking to you, like your experience, your understanding of pressure, and they said, look, can I pay you for this? I'm like, sure. So it just transitioned 2016 into this, and within a year, I'd got rid of all the physical clients, and I was just doing mental, emotional stuff with players. Yeah.
I really want to kind of get a sense of how you reflect on your career, because like obviously you've built a really successful business on the back of everything you went through as a player, and you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't go through all those kind of highs and lows and the emotional turmoil. But something that really stood out to me in your book was you talked about having the pain of knowing you had the ability to actually be at the top. And early in your career, you were, like you said, you were with the England under-20s with Michael Owen and Jamie Carragher and people like that. But the big thing for you was you just couldn't find a form consistently, and there would be phases in your career where you could hit a purple patch, and you would talk about the scouts are coming to see me, and then the little voices in your head would start talking again, and you would lose form. But how do you still have the niggle of regret that you didn't fulfill your potential, or do you look back at it thinking, well, if I did fulfill my potential, maybe I wouldn't be able to help all the players that I do right now?
No, there's no regret. I think because I was only in this conversation with sat in London last night with a Premier League player who's actually been involved with England for the last couple of years. And we were talking about managing the level of drive inside himself. And I said the most powerful word that I use and I came to use was acceptance. And that was the word I learned post-career in rehab when I bottomed out. And so acceptance means acceptance, acceptance of everything. I'm exactly where I need to be. All that happened for exactly that reason. A year, literally, when my career finished that season, relegated with Lincoln City from the Football League. It's like my third relegation in 3 years, captain of the team, rehab. Then my mentor died. Then my granddad who raised us died, all in the space of like 3 months. And the universe just smashed me to my knees. And it was like, are you going to fucking learn or you're not? Are you still going to try and control the shit out of everything or not? And that was a pivotal moment, because I realized that the thing is with people who are driven, the sheer nature of that drive and ambition means you naturally you're so ambitious, you want to grab hold of the wheel. It's the opposite of everything I believe. And so to answer your question, there's no regret. It's everything was played out exactly how it should have done. I would have been no good if I'd have been a top player. I'd probably be dead. I mean, fucking hell. I was bad enough when I didn't have any money. I mean, shit. And you give me a load of money and fame, I'd have been dead in mid-20s, I reckon. I'm just a very extreme character, and I mean, shit. Yeah. I mean, you get to that level, it heightens everything. You see it with England; it's just heightened on a massive scale. I didn't need heightening. I mean, I was bad enough when you leave me in the lower leagues.
One big thing, like a quote that you had in your book as well, you were talking about everybody's searching for these magic answers, and they think it lives in a world of science. So you would have went after things like, nutrition. Players, especially players who listen to this podcast, I'm sure a lot of them would go after things like track and sleep, GPS, video analysis, going into trying to get those one percenters and going into so much detail. But as you said as well, like you always felt you needed to work harder, get stronger, be fitter, eat healthier, all that kind of thing. Is there, or was there a case where you're almost doing too much and you're trying to overdo things and work too hard, and it's actually inhibiting your performance when it comes to the pitch?
Oh, without doubt. I think it's very simple, and I think life's really simple. Having kids now, 4 kids, but certainly with my son, my eldest daughter, she's a great dancer. She dances 7 days a week, but my son's 5, and he started to play sport with me, and because I play golf and we still kick around a football. Like I can't score against him in a 1v1. Like just the other night we were just playing and I'm allowing him to score. He's 5, but I did a bit of skill and scored. And that was it. He flipped both goals over, picked the ball up and kicked it over the fence, ran in and smashed all the doors. And I smiled and I thought, you're already there. Like you're already an elite mindset. There's nothing to add to you. No one can add anything to you right now. My only role is to keep you there. So smashing everything up is okay. You'll never be told off. If he tells me to go fuck myself, that's fine too. Everything's okay. Because the most fine player in the history of golf is Tiger Woods. You just simply can't get anywhere without that level of drive. It's impossible. What happens is it gets shamed out of players. They are made to second guess themselves. Emotionally unwell coaches, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. Like if we have a cold or we're sniffles or we're physically unwell, it's just he's got a bit of a sniffle. If you're emotionally unwell, it comes out in controlling behaviours. The equivalent of emotional sniffle is control. It's this way, shame. It's all of these behaviours. So, yeah, I lost that very simple essence. I had everything, which is why I went jump. I had drive and I had talent and I was creative. You don't need anything more than that. Looking back now, okay, you want to get a bit stronger? Cool. Here's some exercises. You probably want to do those. You probably don't want to eat a burger every night. There's probably a better way. Here's some stuff to eat. Okay, cool. Where does that stop though? And that's the problem. You know, I'm qualified to say this because I was an extreme individual. Like I was paying probably $2,000 a month, I would say, when I was clearing 10 grand a month, probably paying $2,000 a month out on psychologists, nutritionists, my own S&C coach. I went to Switzerland for 5 off seasons in a row, 3 weeks, trained 3 times a day at altitude, came back with resting heart rate of 30 beats a minute. Destroyed everyone first couple of weeks of pre-season. I mean, what am I training for? A fucking marathon, or am I going to run 800 in the Olympics? Or am I a sort of football player? It's creative. Get to the games, tight, tension, play shit. The guy's been on the beach all summer and trained for a few weeks, best player. So it's so confusing and broke me in half, really, because how can this be? How can I be doing this stuff? And my best mate in my playing career was Matthew Upson, and Matt was part of the Arsenal Invincible team, went to the World Cup with England and under Capello, top career, West Ham captain. And Matt used to look at me like, fucking hell, you live better than half the Arsenal players. No alcohol, all this stuff. I mean, I get a text I had a text years ago actually from a couple of young players who went on and had really top careers, better than mine, who used to be my boot boys or clean my kit when I was a pro. And they said to me, you were sports science before sports science was even a thing. Because I would just search. I'd find people to get me better. And I was good enough. It's really fucking good, man. And which was so confusing because when I was drunk, and when I slept with girls in the week with no regard for anyone, it was a beautiful lack of respect for the whole thing. I had lack of respect for girls. I had lack of respect for the scientists. I had lack of respect for the coaches. Lack of respect for the pressure. Lack of respect for the fans. Lack of respect for got to score goals. Well, now it was easy. Fucking easy. And I ran that hard. The longest I ran that was probably 10 weeks, but it was effortless. 6 goals, 10 games. Media want to talk to you. Coaches like, look, whatever the fuck you're doing, keep doing it because you keep playing like this, we can get the playoffs. And I'm going home super confused. Morally, I'm compromising myself constantly. Intelligence-wise, this isn't the way. You're a professional athlete. Drinking. I don't like hurting people. I was brought up by a great mother. You don't hurt people the way I was hurting girls. But hey, I'm performing great. So confusing to me. I think it was in that cycle repeated for 17 years. People go, why did you go to rehab? Well, try repeating that cycle. I mean, it's insanity. It is insanity because you can't find your way out of this circle, destruction, and then playing well, not playing well, then you do it. It's. So I think there's a place for everything. I think science has got far. I love the quote from Winston Churchill, someone I've got on my wall, but You know, that I think it was 1948, his speech in Mid-America, when they said, you know, the war was over, and he predicted that the biggest threat to the future was science. He said, the biggest threat to the future of humanity is science. The world needs scientists, but we don't need a world full of scientists. And I thought, what a quote. And that's sport now. Sport needs scientists. We don't need an industry full of them, but there's an industry full of them.
Mm.
I've sat at tables of analysis with coaches, and scientists are piping up with 2 pence. Sit down. Sit down, for fuck's sake. I mean, come on. It's theory. It's theory. You know, the human leads it. Then let's bring you in and give me some data. Maybe.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah. I think one way, like a lot of the players who are going to be listening to this podcast would have heard from you would have been when Conor Meyler mentioned you in a couple of interviews he did after Tyrone won the All-Ireland a couple of years ago. And I just wanted to ask you about one thing he mentioned. I know he did a leadership course with you at the time, and he spoke about the importance of authenticity and vulnerability. Now, from the outside looking in, or for someone who's a bit more skeptical, they might say, how is that relevant to playing well on the pitch? How is being more authentic or being vulnerable going to help me score a goal or improve my performance? But can you delve into that a little bit, how that might help an athlete actually play better?
What a fantastic question. Honestly, I mean that, because otherwise they're just words. And like you say, what relevance has that got to performance? So when my son is in the garden there, smashing things up because I scored a goal, at that moment, he doesn't know about authenticity, but he's being 100%. Whatever energy he has inside him, and I just think it's energy, is coming out. I think it's the energy of a super competitive young individual, right? Authentic. Well, if you bring that, and people will go, what? So he becomes an adult and he's smashing things up. He's going to get booked and sent off. And I'm like, but he'll figure that out along the way. He's 5, for God's sake. By 10, it'll be a little bit more harnessed. By 14, a touch more harnessed. But let's get it right. Luis Suarez is still biting people at 29. Mike Tyson's ripping Holyfield's ear off. Tiger Woods is still swearing, spitting and smashing clubs up. Novak Djokovic at 36 is still smashing the net at Wimbledon, swearing, chucking rackets into it. It's all that will never go, and you don't want it to go. There just has to be a heightened awareness about who they are. So if their authentic self is a winner, then you have to become heightened in that awareness of what that means. Well, it means you're going to watch the rage come. You're going to watch the fucking anger and the resentment burn up, and you're going to watch that and be present. Djokovic says brilliantly about it. I heard him say recently that he continues to play because he loves the wrestle with himself on the court, and he stares into his soul every time he goes out there. And he said, and what's so challenging is I've got my young 2 kids set up in the box, and millions of kids globally watch me, and I'm still swearing and smashing stuff up with no apology for that. And I don't like myself when I do it. I'm not proud of that, but I also accept that it's part of who I am. That authenticity, you can't find your level as an athlete unless you bring your level. So consistency, I learned about consistency means it's 2 words, consist of. So what do you consist of? If you're making a cake and you want it to be consistently rising the same level and look the same, what does the cake consist of? Exactly how much sugar, exactly how much milk, exactly. So what do we consist of before we play? Do we know emotionally when we walk onto the pitch? Is there anger, resentment, fear, sadness? What's going on? I mean, we know what we consist of physically, right? We can measure it. I've lifted this in the gym. I've run this. I've slept this. Whoop Band will tell you that you can consistently know physically. Emotionally, spiritually, what do you consist of? And so you start to look at authenticity. Staying authentic means you bring all of yourself. And I think the reason it's so challenging is, especially for men, and I think this is why, I mean, Jordan Peterson's work on disenfranchised young men, especially for men, in a society now when male attributes are shamed quickly. You know, the press in England are starting to turn on Jude Bellingham now. The stories have begun. 2 days after the Euros, they're starting to come out. Gareth Southgate had to manage his ego in the camp at the behest of all the other players. I'm already seeing it. It's starting. Because the traits he brings, well, like Djokovic, they'll spill out, and that's okay. So I think authenticity is really important. Vulnerability. What I learned is vulnerability means the truth. It doesn't mean anything other. It's the truth. So one of the things I teach about vulnerability is that athletes spend their life trying to be invincible. whether it's physically invincible, don't get injured, whether it's, nutritionally bulletproof, whatever it is. I always do a simple thing. If you get a small knife and just really slight blade and just pop it straight into your heart and sit there for 10 seconds, tell me how invincible you are. You're dead, right? So I don't care how big your pecs are, how big how strong your nutrition is. One tiny blade, you could be dead in 10 seconds. Truth or not truth? Truth, right? So once we deal with the truth, we are the opposite of invincible. We are pathetically weak and insignificant. We are bits of dust that will float back up to the universe very soon. We don't have anything really. I came to the fact that all we do have is sweat and courage. That's what I learned as a player. When I can bring all of my sweat and intensity and all of myself, give all of myself, and have the courage to remain authentic, it's effortless. But the vulnerability bit is just to accept pre-game. I'm completely vulnerable. I don't know whether today's the day I break my leg, snap my ACL, rip my Achilles, get concussed, score 4, concede 4. I've got no idea what's going to play out in the next hour and a half. And to be vulnerable to that, I think it's the most freeing thing. It requires acceptance then of powerlessness. Then all we've got left is sweat and courage. And I think that's what I came to. So the work with Conor back then, Conor's another alpha male extreme character. Reminds me of myself. I think my journey had touched him like shit. It's like looking in the mirror. And a control freak. And still battles being a control freak now as I do. I mean, my default setting is to control the shit out of everything. I have to work hard at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people resonate with that as well. Another aspect that I wanted to touch on is the edge, and this kind of in inverted commas, finding the edge and finding your best state before a game to play. And I know you would have talked about you played your best when maybe your back was against the wall a bit, but also that was hard to sustain over a long period of time. So when you're working with players and you're trying to help them get into the best frame of mind, the best state before a game, what kind of stuff would you be working on with them?
Well, I think so many players are brilliant when there's adversity. Coaches try and create that us against the world siege mentality. I heard it talked about England, there'll be a siege mentality, and I think it's all nonsense. Because why are you fighting the fans and the journalists? They're right. You're playing shit, right? Like, can we just accept that? There's no acceptance. So the energy then turns to anger, resentment, siege. It's like we're under attack here. There's a threat, so I'm going to come out fighting. I'm not sure that's not... My son's not under threat when he's there in the garden still wanting to attack and smash things up. It's just pure natural desire. So the problem with the edge is he's on the edge right now at 5. I was searching for the edge because I couldn't trust that maybe it's in me. It's in me. If someone comes across me first minute and hits me, there's going to be something in my DNA that clicks. Like, fuck that.
Mm.
It's on, right? I don't need to go find it. As a child, he doesn't need to go, right, game's coming up in 4 hours time, porridge, do this, stretch, foam roll, music, get up for it. Like, what are you getting up for? So there's no acceptance of, I think the edge is in you. I don't think there's anything to find with that. I think the acceptance of, Novak Djokovic. I think Novak Djokovic, like Kobe, and Kobe was a great loss. He had that true wisdom where he was an absolutely selfish, horrible individual. Let's get that right. You only have to read any of Phil Jackson's work on Kobe Bryant. He was an absolute narcissist, which is right. Every top performer is a selfish individual, bordering on absolute narcissist. I mean, and that's absolutely okay. What he learned, though, and this is the wisdom, that didn't serve him, and it cost him a lot in his life. So then the Mamba mentality came, the deeper spiritual understanding, the spiritual warrior, powerful stuff once you enter that place. Novak Djokovic lived in the same place. So I think bringing that spiritual element into his performance, he seeks to still feel that before the game, that edgy. So I still feel energy with me before I go out onto the court that could paralyze me. So I still feel that same energy today at 37. It could destroy me. He said, but I'm able to observe it, watch it, understand that it's the drive and the desire to win, and start to let that go through meditation, breath work, writing down his fears. Very powerful stuff. So that's the edge. The edge is not, you don't find the edge, you just be the edge, you know.
Yeah. Pressure is a privilege is a quote that you often see people mention. You see it on social media and things like that. What's your opinion on that quote?
I agree with it wholeheartedly. Now at 46, and probably by 36, as a player, I hated it. My mum used to send me that quote on match day. Mum used to send me a Muhammad Ali image and pressure's a privilege, good luck. And I'm like, fucking privilege. I haven't slept 2 nights, want to vomit. Full of anxiety and fear. This is not a fucking privilege. So, but it's only when you look back and you think, shit, life is pretty dull without that adrenaline of it's all on here. It's all on. And so, yeah, pressure is a privilege. It is a privilege. It means you're going to go and do something where there could be huge rewards, emotionally or financially, whatever they are. It means there's something on the line, and that is a privilege. Yeah, but it's very difficult to understand that when you're in it.
Yeah, exactly. I want to just bring you through some passages from your book, and for anyone listening, I would really encourage them to give it a read, because I think there's some great nuggets of wisdom in there. But maybe you can just expand on them or give them a bit of context, your thoughts on what you said then, and maybe what you think about it now. The first one I want to talk about is, so you say, is it a coincidence that the best athletes are called aloof or arrogant? It's no coincidence for me. When I see somebody who has complete trust in themselves, somebody who knows what they are and what they're not, these people have heard a million experts and listened to loads of advice, but they never stray from their instinctive nature.
Yeah. Again, I'd probably cite Jude Bellingham right now. He's called all of those things. Novak Djokovic was booed at Wimbledon the other week. He's not liked, Novak Djokovic. Clearly, he's not liked. Some are arrogant. Arrogance is rooted in fear. So there are those, and ego is related to that. So there are some who are egotistical and arrogant, but they're terrified of losing, and there's drive in them. You can still be very successful that way, but you'll pay a big price. At some point, your life's going to come burning down around you if you drive with that ego and unresolved fear. The ones who walk that line brilliantly are, again, Djokovic, who's seen as aloof. Kobe wasn't liked. Let's get it right. Bellingham now. Cantona was my hero growing up as a young footballer. They just know themselves. And it's funny because people say to me, you can come across today as rude at times. And it's funny, I'm actually really grateful for that, because what it means is I just don't tolerate much bullshit anymore. I spent too many years tolerating it and not knowing who I was in it and listening and okay, and now I'll be like, yeah, I won't be doing that. Thanks. Catch you later. Yeah. It just bangs, dismissed, and you see someone. I'm not allowing any of that in my space. None of it's coming in. And I think these top performers have that in abundance. You've got to work. And I educating the coaches. And look, I work with many head coaches today. I spent the last 18 months working with Russell Martin at Swansea and then Southampton last year, in a very successful year at the club, the players and him. And I work with 4 coaches in the US, baseball, soccer. I've done some American football stuff. One of the things I say is that only your ego is offended as a coach. If a player tells you to go fuck yourself, you should love that moment. And if you are rooted in self, you won't be offended. Because can you see at that moment, can you see in them what you have in yourself? So if a player tells me to go fuck myself, I'm smiling, going, fucking hell, I've done that a million. I can see it. I know where he's at. I'm going over, getting in a headlock, giving him a kiss, going, brother, come on, man. Let's talk. Don't let this burn you down here. Right? It's an easy conversation. So authenticity, you want it, you want all that stuff. So yeah, to go to that quote, yeah, you want whole
whole human beings. And we are in dangerous times right now for men, especially fractured men everywhere, battling themselves, too aggressive, too intense. Then they can't find the performance. Then it's not intense enough. I see it's so common. Show up, be yourself, and understand people won't like you. People want to critique you. And that's the man in the arena quote, isn't it? With President Roosevelt, the famous man in the arena thing, you know.
Another one you wrote was, I know which players can get to the top. It's the ones who can look at their biggest fears and not run away from their true selves. There are those who get away without it, but there will be an escapism in their lives which costs them in some way. So what do you mean about the ones who can look at their biggest fears? Can you give any examples of what you mean by players who can actually look at their biggest fears and not run away?
Well, you only have to watch the Federer documentary just come out on Amazon, and it's a really, really good documentary, actually. His last 12 days of his career before retirement. And there's a moment where he's just sitting in his place in Switzerland. He said, I just won't miss this. He said, just absolute sickness in my stomach, nerves, fear. I just won't miss this. He said, but then ironically, I probably will miss it. And it's like that's what I'm talking about. You don't hear players say that. They walk through their careers, yeah, it was okay. And I see it all now, all the pundits online. But where are they saying, I was riddled with fear? You know, I look at Roy Keane sometimes, and, you know, I'm 6'3". You know, Roy Keane's 5'9", 10. You could have swatted him like a mosquito. I mean, your weight difference, you're twice the size of the guy, right? He's a winner. He's an absolute warrior, Roy Keane, a top, unbelievable player mentality. That's not in question. The reason he fails in management is because he's not facing the fact in his soul, he's acting like he was never scared, had no fear of failure, never made a mistake. It's the invincible versus vulnerable bit. Because to be vulnerable and go, I was terrified, you know, and some days, you know, that it's a softer way of looking at things, but you can get by that way. But I would suggest you will have a pretty fucked up life if you're driving like that all the time without a softness to it. You know, it's nonsense. So when I do my presentations, I open up with Mike Tyson saying I was just terrified, crying in the locker room, terrified. Tiger Woods saying nervous on every single shot, never left me. Federer, Djokovic. So I start there: Djokovic, Federer, Tyson, Tyson, Tiger Woods, and then David Goggins. And I finished that little 4 minutes, and I look at who in the locker room and whoever I'm presenting to. I said, anyone's careers, and Ronaldo, we finish off with him saying, haven't slept, terrified, feel sick. So once you've got those guys sitting there, I think everyone needs to shut the fuck up and sit down, right? It's like, just shut up.
Yeah. I think, yeah, when people sort of see that even the elite, the greats of
the best of the best ever,
yeah, struggled.
It's not even a struggle. It's the sheer fact of drive means when I'm in my bedroom at 8 and that soul that I have is going, right, I'm going to play for England. And I knew that at 8, that was the drive. Well, then every day I felt I'm not there. There's pressure. It starts then. The pressure began then. Because I've put an energy out into the universe that I want to achieve something. And it's on. It starts. Every game you don't score. I remember those voices at 9, 10.
Yeah. Just the final quote I'm going to read out for you. Believing lies is dangerous. When we stop trusting our truth, when we repress our instincts, when we tell ourselves there must be something wrong with us for feeling what we feel or believing what we believe, we deal a deadly blow to our self-worth and our health.
Lack of boundaries, you know, shame. Carl Jung describes shame as a soul-eating emotion. Shame, when I wrote a module on shame, it's the changer of everything. What I learned about toxic shame is its you are statement. So if at that moment with my son, when he smashes things up and that energy, I see the energy of a competitive individual. If I go, you've got problems, who does that? You're naughty, you are statements. Well, I now make him second guess an energy that he doesn't even understand. So whenever he sees that energy come up in him again, naughty, I'm bad, it begins. And I think this stuff is starting at 5-6 years of age, and it's tragic. I already know now, if my son wants to be an athlete, he'll be world class. So no, fuck it, that won't be difficult. That would be pretty easy, I think. No, because I see if he wants to do it, if he's driven to do it, he's going to have the physical attributes because his mother's tall and she was a runner, and I there won't be any. He's going to be a big guy, and he'll just have a real healthy disrespect for the whole fucking thing. he'll just be looking at coaches going, okay, yeah, I won't be doing any of that, but appreciate your time. And then bang, perform, and they'll all have to stay quiet. And then people go, oh, he's selfish, you can't talk to him. But then he's doing charity work and he's praying every night with me. And well, what do you want here? Doing more work than you're doing. There's a humility beyond that you'll ever comprehend that humility. But yeah, he won't be listening to anything you're talking about. So you should have to work very hard. Coaches should have to work very, very, very hard to get respect from players. And I say to my kids now, don't just give your respect away to teachers at school. Forget all that nonsense. You sit there, but just figure them out. If you find that teacher to be rude, you don't start handing out respect to that.
There's going to be a lot of players who listen to this who are struggling with this aspect of their game. Maybe they're feeling consumed by
it's the most common thing I see here in the US, anywhere. It's the most common thing, Duff.
Yeah. And obviously, as an S&C coach, if someone feels that they're not strong enough, I can give them a program to follow 3 times a week in the gym. If you were advising a player, because obviously this is the kind of thing that players need to be working on. It's not just a once-off. You need to be consistently working on this type of thing. If you were to give a player advice, what they could do to improve this aspect of their game, are there any like simple actionable things that someone can put into place that would help them?
To be really honest, I have just launched for $150, which is peanuts in the grand scheme of it, an 8-hour course. I've launched it last week. I wanted to build it years ago and I just didn't have time, and I built it. 8 hours, 8 modules, 30 questions per module. Teachable is a new platform I have set up. I've created a new Academy of Excellence on my website, and it's the first of the courses which we'll be launching. And it's emotional intelligence for athletes. Modules on fear and control, vulnerability, healthy disrespect. And it's me lecturing, teaching to camera in a studio, an hour per module, questions, videos of top players discussed. And then in my app, anyone who signs up goes into a private group in my app. And so the vision is hundreds of thousands of, there'll be a lot in the US in there, and I host lives in there and they can ask questions. And so ongoing support in this area. But, I wish I didn't have to come on here and upsell something. It's not really my style. But I thought I've just delivered a product which is fucking cheap and it's unbelievably powerful. Because having delivered the one I've written for leaders, that's one I deliver live or over 8 weeks. That's what Conor did. But I'm like, how can I create something? I came from a single mother with 3 sons working 2 jobs. We didn't have any money. Like, how shit, if there was something accessible, if I'd have gone to my mum and said, Mum, I've got 120 quid, can I buy this course, or whatever it is, we might have found that. And that's kept me awake, to be honest, over the last few years, because you get to a point now, 13 years of doing this, when I'm very blessed. I've got to the point where I am working with elite players and teams, and I'm very grateful for that. But I don't ever forget the kid that I was, and how hard it is for kids to get the right information. There's so much crap everywhere. TikTok. I only saw yesterday. These coaches posting stuff, and it's just absolute nonsense, all of it. And I'm not knocking anyone, but it's, difficult. On my website, sweatandcourage.com, the Academy of Excellence, click on that. Teachable, we've got it all set up. It's going to be a new academy of courses, and we've got loads of courses. There's going to be cheaper ones on there as well. I've just created a course on self-belief. I think it's about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Lewis, who works with me, he was a European Tour golfer. He's one of my lead coaches. So he's been there, missing cuts, sleeping in his car, smashing his clubs up. He's lived it all. He's coaching now for 5-6 years, coaching all kinds of individuals globally. And that's what I want. And I've spoke to Conor about this at some point when Conor's finished his studies and maybe stopped playing. I think I'd love Conor to become a coach as well for us. He gets it. He's lived it. Yeah, top guy.
Let's bring this home. I just have a couple of quick fire questions to ask you. And look, I think like you've had a 17-year professional career, so I think it's important to recognize how difficult it is to actually make it as a footballer. But if you were to look at your favorite achievement from your career or your proudest moment on the pitch, what would it be?
I don't know. There was many horrendous ones, but there was many incredible moments as well. I don't really have one. I don't think. If I'm honest with you.
All right. What's the best book you've read recently or podcast you've listened to?
Brené Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness.
Okay. What's that about?
Braving the wilderness of authenticity. So the minute you go, oh, I'm going to be authentic, you're in the wilderness. It's all coming here. How do you cope with it? How do you manage it? You know, so Brené Brown's work is exceptional. Any of her stuff I would highly recommend.
Drew, if people want to follow the things that you're doing, where's the best place to find you?
Instagram, the Fear Coach, or Sweat and Courage, which is my consultancy, and LinkedIn. I'm strong on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's opened up the world for me, so I really enjoy creating.
Listen, Drew, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate the time that you've given, and I think players are going to take a huge amount from this. So thank you so much for coming on. And like I said, I would really encourage people to read the book and to follow you on Instagram and just follow what you're doing. I think you're really helping a lot of players. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Thanks a lot.